Welcome back to From Kitchen to C-Suite. I'm your host, Don. For decades, the food industry has operated on a simple, reliable trajectory: bigger portions, bolder flavors, and more frequent snacking. We've built global empires on the science of betcha can't eat just one. But suddenly, the fundamental math of appetite is changing. Lately, the biggest disruptor in the grocery aisle isn't a new competitor or a supply chain crisis. It's a tiny weekly injection. For decades, the food industry has successfully pursued a strategy predicated on escalating consumption through larger portions, intensified flavors, and frequent snacking. This growth was anchored in the science of hedonic hyperpalatability, meticulously achieving the bliss point, a precise, scientifically engineered balance of sugar, salt, and fat, designed to maximize intake and override natural satiety mechanisms. This volume-driven model underpinned the exponential success of consumer packaged goods, CPG companies, quick-service restaurants, and convenience retailers. However, the foundational dynamics of appetite are now changing, rendering the long-standing industry playbook obsolete. The primary current disruptor is not a new market competitor or a geopolitical event, but a weekly pharmaceutical injection. The advent of GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide-1, agonist medications, marketed under names such as Ozempic, Wegovy, and Zepbound, is creating a profound tectonic shift. These pharmaceuticals operate by mimicking a naturally occurring hormone, affecting change on two critical fronts. They significantly decelerate gastric emptying, thereby physically extending the feeling of fullness. Critically, they also modulate the brain's reward centers, effectively diminishing the primal pleasure derived from high-calorie, highly processed foods. This mechanism leads to a substantial reduction in cravings for traditionally profitable items, those rich in sugar, fat, and refined carbohydrates, which constitute the pillars of the modern food empire. This development transcends a mere market trend. When millions of consumers lose their intense, chemically mediated interest in ultra-processed snacks, sweetened beverages, and second servings, when the very neurochemistry that fueled decades of volume-based expansion is fundamentally altered, the consequences for big food's profitability are immediate and sustained, resulting in a measurable deceleration of caloric intake across the consumer base. This compelling force necessitates that corporations urgently reassess every component of their operational framework, spanning from product formulation and ingredient sourcing to packaging design and multi-million-dollar marketing strategies. The era defined by selling more is rapidly being supplanted by the imperative of selling better. Strategic and data analysis of industry adaptation. This analysis delves into empirical data to assess whether the food industry is genuinely contracting or merely adapting through strategic refinement. Market apprehension, evidenced by investors withdrawing capital from major snack, candy, and beverage manufacturers perceived as most vulnerable to this demand destruction, has been notable. We examine emerging patterns signaling permanent changes in consumer behavior and the aggressive counter-strategies being deployed. The basket swap. Prioritizing functional foods and nutrient density. The decrease in total caloric consumption is not uniform. It is highly selective. We are observing a distinct and quantifiable migration in consumer purchasing towards nutrient-dense options and away from empty calories. Products such as protein shakes, high-fiber supplements, electrolytes, bone broth, and low-carbohydrate, high-satiety meal replacements are rapidly displacing impulse-buy snacks, sodas, and frozen pizzas. This phenomenon aligns with the physiological requirements of the reduced appetite consumer. With a diminished total food intake, the nutritional value of each calorie becomes paramount. The focus is shifting from caloric density to nutrient density. Companies are swiftly adjusting to this new nutritional mandate, concentrating on protein for muscle mass preservation, fiber for digestive regularity, often impacted by GLP-1s, and complex vitamins. This adaptation is not merely defensive. It is catalyzing a boom in the functional food and supplement sectors, elevating former niche markets into mainstream arenas for health-conscious consumers. The portion pivot, right-sizing supply chain and profitability. For the past 5 decades, the industry pursued value via supersizing, equating larger portions with increased consumer value and higher sales volume. Now, CPG executives are progressively, and in some instances overtly, resizing products. This involves the reintroduction of genuinely single-serving packages of chips, smaller, premium-priced bottles of soda, and reduced-calorie entrees formulated for satiation without the perception of compromise. This change presents significant logistical and operational hurdles. Manufacturers must recalibrate multi-million-dollar production lines, reconfigure supply chain logistics, and redesign packaging dimensions to accommodate a new, reduced-appetite consumption pattern. The overarching objective is to sustain profitability despite reduced sales volume. This necessitates a transition from a volume-driven margin model to a premium-driven margin model, emphasizing higher per-unit pricing based on perceived quality, health benefits, or superior convenience. The investor panic, distinguishing speculation from corporate strategy. It is necessary to dissect the stock market's reaction to declining caloric intake. While preliminary data from pilot markets and consumer surveys confirm a measurable decline in demand for high-sugar and high-fat categories, the reality is often more complex than media narratives suggest. We will analyze which corporations are insulated by product diversification, e.g., those with substantial presence in functional nutrition, fresh produce, or premium proteins, and which are aggressively innovating to capture the new health-focused consumer base. Innovation is paramount. Companies are competitively launching new low-sugar, high-protein variants of established products, effectively engaging in the calculated cannibalization of their older, highly profitable lines to secure future market share. The pressure to adapt is undeniable, compelling a strategic reckoning that will determine the victors and vanquished of the forthcoming food generation. The central question remains, is this the definitive, irreversible conclusion of the indulgence era that characterized the last 50 years of food marketing? Or is it merely the genesis of a high-protein, low-volume, nutrient-focused revolution that subordinates brute quantity to quality, nutrition, and moderation? So let's get started and see if we can address the questions and issues we have brought up. So grab that coffee and grab a comfortable chair as we jump into the new episode of From Kitchen to C-Suite. The rise of GLP-1 weight loss medications presents an unforeseen and formidable challenge to American small business owners within the hospitality sector. This development arrives as the industry continues to navigate perennial difficulties such as persistent inflation, supply chain volatility, and elevated labor costs. Industry experts are now voicing serious concerns regarding a biological factor that is substantially impacting profitability: the rapid proliferation of GLP-1 agonists. The escalating adoption of pharmaceuticals such as Ozempic and Wegovy constitutes more than a medical trend. It is fundamentally altering national consumer behavior, resulting in a demonstrable decline in both food and alcohol consumption at dining establishments. Analysts posit that the entire industry is currently experiencing a compression, a severe confluence of sustained economic pressures and profound, swift shifts in consumer lifestyle and dietary practices. Market observers and financial analysts concur that the restaurant industry is confronting some of the most arduous operational conditions encountered in over a decade. This downturn is ascribed to a potent combination of macroeconomic forces and pharmacological effects that are increasingly complicating the ability of establishments to sustain profitability and ensure adequate cash flow. One industry analyst elaborated, "The economic realities are irrefutable. Operational costs are at an all-time high. Customer visit frequency is diminished, and new variables like GLP medications are directly reducing both the quantity of food and, critically, the volume of alcohol consumed during dining occasions. This overall reduction in consumption is amplified by pre-existing trends. The established decline in alcohol consumption, fueled by movements such as Dry January and Sober Curiosity, in addition to the GLP-1 effect, is exerting significant pressure on the industry's traditional profit centers. Given that alcohol and signature beverages typically command the highest profit margins for full-service restaurants, this reduction constitutes a direct threat to their financial viability. The ramifications are particularly severe for the nation's extensive network of independent, privately owned operators. These businesses frequently function on extremely narrow margins and are contending with considerable debt accumulated post-pandemic. For many of these small proprietors, personal financial guarantees place assets such as residences, savings, and vehicles at risk as they navigate a market where patrons are simply ordering fewer courses, fewer drinks, and foregoing dessert. This change is considered structural rather than merely cyclical. Notwithstanding these profound and unprecedented difficulties, industry leadership maintains that significant potential for success and longevity remains for those restaurant owners who are prepared to adapt with speed and strategic foresight. In a market characterized by physically smaller consumption and reduced sales of high-margin beverages, the caliber of the overall guest experience, the social atmosphere, and the perceived value proposition of the visit assume paramount importance. Experts contend that during periods of structural market compression, such as the current environment, exceptional businesses are presented with the greatest opportunity to differentiate themselves. Success will likely accrue to operators who can master three essential objectives: cultivating deep connections with their target clientele, delivering impeccable, tailored service, and offering a sense of distinct value that transcends mere caloric intake or the dish itself. This necessitates a focus on refining ambiance, perfecting service standards, innovating menus to highlight premium ingredients, and developing memorable social environments. In essence, positioning the dining occasion as a worthwhile indulgence, even if the average check size diminishes. Amidst the operational complexities, glimmers of potential relief are emerging through policy considerations that could furnish a much-needed financial safeguard for the hospitality workforce. and, by extension, the businesses themselves. Policy proposals currently under discussion at various levels of government, such as the implementation of a federal no tax on tips policy and the potential elimination or reduction of taxes on overtime earnings, are viewed as significant prospective benefits for the industry's essential employees. Such measures could channel substantially more disposable income back into the hands of service workers and the broader consumer marketplace. Proponents argue that this augmentation of consumer spending power could eventually encourage more frequent visits to local bars, coffee shops, and eateries, thereby helping to offset the observed decline in per-person expenditure. While the full implementation of meaningful, pro-small business policies addressing burdensome insurance costs, complex regulatory frameworks, and high taxation rates may require time, industry advocates insist that the American ideal of business ownership remains fundamentally achievable. The trajectory toward long-term prosperity, however, will undoubtedly demand a highly efficient, acutely focused, and perpetually adaptable methodology to meet the rapidly evolving dietary habits and consumption patterns of the modern, health-conscious consumer. As this intensive analysis of the Ozempic economy concludes, it is evident that the food industry confronts not merely a volumetric reduction, but a profound, strategic recalibration. The antecedent supersize paradigm is being supplanted by a GLP-1-friendly orientation, prioritizing nutrient-dense, meticulously portioned meals. Major industry corporations, including Nestlé and Conagra, have already initiated the necessary adjustments to their product portfolios. By 2026, the definition of consumer success is fundamentally redefined, transitioning from an emphasis on quantity to a deliberate concentration on metabolic health, primarily driven by critical components such as increased protein and fiber content. The imperative for executive leadership is unequivocally clear. Biological imperatives have ascended to the status of a principal market competitor. Successful enterprises will be those that effectively guide consumers through this biological transformation, rather than attempting to impede it, whether achieved via a high-protein dairy product or a smaller premium dining portion. The overarching governing principle has irrevocably shifted. Less has now become the functional equivalent of more. I extend my sincere gratitude for your attendance, on behalf of myself, Don, for this installment of From Kitchen to C-Suite, wherein we have systematically investigated the business dynamics governing what and the precise quantity we consume. We formally acknowledge and appreciate the integral support provided by our esteemed sponsors. Our profound gratitude is extended to HRB Universal for their unwavering commitment to cultivating professional excellence and furnishing comprehensive resources that empower the culinary and hospitality sectors. We also formally recognize the Plate and Pour Collective Equity Partner Program. This initiative exemplifies a dedicated commitment to fostering equitable expansion and ensuring shared success within the food and beverage industry, actively contributing to a more inclusive and prosperous future for entrepreneurial endeavors. Innovation, sustained commitment, and a robust professional network constitute the essential drivers on the pathway toward C-suite attainment. We strongly recommend leveraging the invaluable resources and professional support extended by our sponsors. For comprehensive details regarding engagement with HRB Universal and the Plate and Pour Collective Equity Partner Program, please access hrbuni.com or conduct a search for HRB Universal. We anticipate welcoming you to the subsequent installment of From Kitchen to C-Suite, where we shall continue to examine compelling subjects expressly designed to advance your professional trajectory and entrepreneurial ambition. Don't miss a single insight from Kitchen to C-Suite. Whether you're at your desk or on the move, you can find the Ozempic Economy episode right now. Headphone listen on your favorite podcast app. Stream us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and Deezer. TV watch on the Speed Mingle TV Network. Catch the full video experience on YouTube. Fire stream on the big screen, watching via Roku or Fire TV. Just head to the Apps and Games directory and search for HRB TV Network to start watching. Until our next broadcast, we encourage your sustained innovation and relentless pursuit of superior professional achievement.